The Charlotte Hornets lose their fourth in a row and, of course, suffer more injuries along the way. We'll discuss that and play some Stangin or Clangin today on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We are free. We are available anywhere you get your podcast. And as always, that includes YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. There's Doug Branson. You can find his work on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com, and you can listen to me, Walker Mail, every weekday on WFNZ, 12 to 3 p.m., 92.7 FM. It sucks, man. I see the first bullet point. The house is still haunted, Doug. I didn't know you were going to drop that on me, but then I start to think about it, and okay, yeah, Hornets get destroyed a couple of times against Milwaukee. They lose to Philly. They lose to Toronto. Oh, and they're suffering more injuries along the way. The high after the trade deadline, is it safe to say that I still think we're experiencing like the remnants of the high, but that very specific high that we experienced, I think that's no longer here after the fourth loss and, of course, more guys getting banged up.
Well, we'll see, right? Because the Hornets are due back to come home for a while, and we'll see what the reaction is in Spectrum Center. If they can get a few more wins against some easier competition, will we hear some "Let's Go Hornets" chants in the building? But there's no doubt about it that this team has fallen all the way back down to earth, and some of it you can excuse for injuries, not only to LaMelo Ball and Mark Williams, who continue to be out, but also recent injuries to Seth Curry and Cody Martin, thanks to even more ankle turns. I mean, it is really incredible. I don't pay attention to the rest of the league and their injury reports. Like, I'm not like totally locked in there, but it just seems like the Hornets have an inordinate amount of freak ankle injuries and just brutal turns. And here we are once again. Seth Curry, someone that every time he stepped on the floor, he was doing good things, was able to, knock down mid-range shots, get assists, not turn the ball over, not make a ton of mistakes. He was crucial coming off the bench. He injures himself stepping in for Brandon Miller over the weekend, who himself had some, lower back issues that kept him out of a game. And he turns his ankle, and we have no word, but that looks significant. The Cody Martin one looked bad, but not like, oh, he's going to be out weeks bad. And Cody Martin has been the engine of this team's, at least the backcourt defense, and so losing him was critical as well. So but it's not only that. I mean, I think this Hornets team had this weekend 2 winnable games, Walker, against a Philadelphia team without Embiid and against the Raptors, who are still sort of trying to find an identity, and they lost those games for 2 different reasons. In Philly, they just let them crash the boards, tons of offensive rebounds. And in this game against the Raptors, a game you knew coming in, the Raptors were really good at getting out on the run, fast break, transition. That's where they live. That's where they make their money. If you can just, you're not going to stop them, but if you slow them down, teams have beaten them over and over again, just slowing them down into transition and making shots on the other end. And the Hornets allow 26 points in transition. So it's like something different every game. And certainly you can source it back to the injuries, but I think it's more than that too.
Yeah, the transition was terrible. Steve Clifford talked about that. The transition defense, I mean, they got out and they ran quite a bit because the Hornets allowed them to before the Charlotte Hornets could even get back on defense. And you're right. So here we are with the house still being haunted. You have injuries to Cody Martin, who Steve Clifford called elite, very Matt Rule-esque. Panthers fans are twitching right now, but he called Cody Martin elite defensively, and he was nowhere to be found because of his injury. You mentioned Seth Curry. Doug, we just did, it was like a minor fawning, but we did love us some Seth Curry before he hopped on, or we did it, I think, the last episode, we talked about how good things happen whenever he's on the floor, and he's not on the floor. So because the ghosts are now catching up. At first, we accused Vegas of not catching up with the Hornets. The ghosts are now catching up with the Hornets and making.
They just went on vacation. We thought the Exorcist came in and removed all the ghosts. Turns out they just went to Cabo, and now they're back.
Now they're back. With this loss, as we mentioned, 111 to 106 to Toronto. And just in case I hadn't revealed the final score, any positives you want to take away here? Any negatives? What's something that stood out most to you watching this one get away? Maybe outside of transition defense, something we already mentioned.
Well, I think you had good moments in the second half to get them back into the game, because in the second quarter, they took a 10-point lead, gave all of that back because of poor transition defense. And it was across the board. We've talked a lot about Brandon Miller getting upset with players for not getting back into transition defense. But in this game, I think I could identify multiple plays where he was not getting back running as hard. I wonder if the lower back thing, if he came back from it, maybe he could have stayed out a couple more games, but he's been a guy that's tough. Grant Williams looked like he was dealing with an injury in that game too, to his leg. He was limping around for a while there. Seemed to get better as the game went on, but I'm sure that held him up a little bit. But it was across the board. Either guys were not running back hard enough, or they were out of position. They were not stopping the ball. They were worried about sort of staying in position, staying on the shooters. But it was just a tragic effort in terms of transition defense, and that gave away the lead in the second quarter. But in the third quarter, positives. Miles Bridges got out of, I'm going to take these mid-range jumpers that I'm terrible at, and back into, I'm going to drive this basketball down their throat over and over again and dare them to stop me. And he was able to score, I think, 16 points. And I think he only had 18 to that point. I think he only scored like 2 or 4 in the first half. He scores 16 in that third quarter, gets the Hornets all the way back, and then I thought Bridges and Brandon, their combined defensive effort in the fourth quarter, got enough stops to allow the Hornets to get back in it. And then, late game execution wasn't there. Bertans was hot from 3. They tried to really feed him the ball, get him into a position late in that game where he could take the 3 that got them over the hump. And the one that he had in the corner, a bad pass, didn't really catch it in rhythm. And then the final play, Micic, great play by Gary Trent. I'm really not even going to blame Micic. There were multiple turnovers in this game from Micic that you could go, okay, that was totally on Micic. But that was just a great play by Trent. And had Trent not made that play, Micic had Bertans wide open for 3. And so they just didn't execute there.
And speaking of scary hours, that's scary for Toronto if Trent doesn't make that play. So here's something I'll notice real quickly, and it's been more of a trend. I think now, once we get to the 4 or 5 game mark, maybe you can explore whether it's a trend or not. The shine of the new backcourt post-trade deadline starting to wear off a little bit. So now where you have Trey Mann, the last 5 games, he's only reached double-digit scoring 1 time. And before that, he had reached double-digit scoring every single outing with the Charlotte Hornets team. Micic, I don't know how your timeline looked, Doug. My timeline, people are really starting to get over Micic's act, where the shooting is really frustrating people. And then the turnovers. You mentioned he had 4 in this game. Grant Williams had 6. Micic had 4, and those were the guys that turned it over more than anybody. And so if you wanted to lump Williams, he rebounded really well, like 6 offensive rebounds. He made his shots inside the 3-point arc, so not so much him for this game. But I think with the backcourt specifically, where Trey Mann comes in and is this electric guard, and Micic is so much fun, I think now we're starting to see them come back down to earth just a little bit. And that affects them, especially because they're offensive-oriented players, and, well, they haven't been playing well offensively the last 5 games.
Yeah, and the problem is so much of the shooting has gone away. What do I say over and over on this show? Shooting covers all sins. When you have all 5 guys out on the floor that can knock down shots, and they do so, then it really challenges defenses, and defenses get out of position on multiple possessions. And that's where, as the offensive team, you can get a lot of confidence, and you're not making some of those blunders that we see Micic making now, because I think he's second-guessing. I think when he drives and he's trying to kick, he's looking into the corner, and instead of seeing Seth Curry or instead of seeing Bertans, sometimes he's seeing Bryce McGowens and JT Thor and these guys. You go, uh-oh, should I throw it to this guy? I'm not sure. Even though Bryce had a good game, JT Thor did not. But I think there's some second-guessing. There's some times when Micic gets caught in the air and he was making those plays, those kind of incredible, like his feet almost touched the ground and he somehow gets the pass out. Those plays were being made because I think defenses were still sort of sinking down and allowing shooters to be open. I think the trend of these 4 losses is that the good teams have gotten wise to what the Hornets were doing and they've adjusted a little bit, and the Hornets have not been able to adjust to the adjustment. And Micic's turnovers are part of that. Grant Williams is part of that. I think Miles Bridges, when he's driving, is good, but I think him taking some okay shots or bad shots is part of that. I mean, that mid-ranger that he took towards the end of that game was just awful shot selection. It was a guy in Bridges who was trying to make something happen because he felt that pressure to make something happen, and he made the wrong play. And Brandon Miller has been a victim of that as well. And it just all goes back to the thing that we've been talking about over and over. And you can't, honestly, you have to keep talking about it because it is the thing, which is if LaMelo Ball were on the floor right now, things would be completely different. Even with the injuries to Curry and Martin, even with all of that, if LaMelo Ball were on the floor right now, things would be a lot different.
Maybe we can get to some more of that and more thoughts on the weekend coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to
what
sleep
happened
on the
against
Hornets
Philly?
just yet.
Oh, sorry, Eric. I didn't mean to interrupt you. So
Eric was a little slow there. To be fair to you, Eric was a little slow on the uptake there.
I don't want to step on you. That's radio etiquette, broadcasting etiquette 101. But I
Get
stepped
together,
on him.
Eric.
I apologize to Eric. We'll give you our thoughts on the Philly game and maybe overall trends, some more developing over the weekend in just a moment here on Locked On Hornets. Before we do that, I want to tell you how this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The wait is almost over, North Carolina. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, is coming to your state. On March 11th, you'll finally be able to bet on all your favorite teams and all your favorite sports. And with FanDuel, there's tons of ways for you to get in on the action. You can bet on everything from the money line to over-unders to which team will win this year's Tobacco Road rivalry, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, with live betting, you can even pick which player will put up the next bucket and the one after that, and you can see for yourself why FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon so you can be the first to know when FanDuel goes live in North Carolina. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel. 21 plus and present in North Carolina. If gambling is more than a game for you or a loved one, free help is available. Text more than a game to 53342. Call 877-718-5543 or visit morethanagame.nc.gov. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Okay, Doug, we talked about the new additions even more so, and specifically the backcourt guys. Let's focus a little more on Man. I said that he had not scored anything less than double digits before this 5-game stretch. He technically had 9 points against Memphis and then double digits the rest of the way. Exciting, fun player, had 20 points, was assisting at a high rate. I think that's why we loved him so much against Memphis. I think he, while didn't shoot well, did have 7 assists in that one. And so he's not playing as well anymore. And Doug, something we've talked about quite a bit is despite us really being excited about what Man can bring to the table, Steve Clifford has not been closing the game with him. It had been Brandon Miller and Micic. And last night, he still doesn't close with Trey Mann. He instead goes with Davis Bertans, who gave us a dunk and continues to give us the threes. So why is Steve Clifford refusing to go to Trey Mann even when it felt like there was an opportunity?
So I think we can take some of Clifford's pregame comments on the difference between Mann and Micic and his postgame comments on Bertans and put them all into a cauldron, mix it all up, and try to come up with some analysis about why he's not deciding to close with Man and went with Bertans. Because, look, Bertans was hot from 3, and I think only he and Brandon hit a 3 in this game. They each hit 4, and no one else was hitting 3s. And so you needed that shooting on the floor, and Bertans was hot, Trey wasn't. So you could go with the simple explanation there for this particular game. But before the game, when discussing Man and Micic, he said, look, Man is a score-first guard, and Micic is a guy that looks to pass first and score later, although I think a lot of people in your timeline would argue with that because sometimes Micic does fall in love with his own shot or his own drive to the detriment of the
driving.
team.
Loves it when he can. I mean, because he can't shoot, right? And so he tries to drive when he can, and sometimes it actually works a lot given what the defense is doing to him. But yeah, you were going along with that point.
So man is a score first guard, and then after the game, when talking about Bertans, he's saying, look, Bertans is a really good team defender. He went out of his way to say he was good on both ends of the floor, good team defender. Didn't say good one-on-one defender, because I think all of us could see that Bertans can get beat. Like, he's not, side to side, 1v1. Like, he can get roasted and toasted.
Well, but they hide him. I mean, against Milwaukee, when Gallinari was in the game, Steve Clifford was like, thank God. I think it was vice versa. It felt like Doc Rivers and Steve Clifford just agreed, hey, I'll put in Bertans. If you put in Danilo, we good? Cool.
Right, but in terms of help defense, in terms of team defense, when they go zone, like, you can see Bertans quickly recovers out to the corner. Like, he's good at just sort of knowing where to be. And so I put all that together, and I think that, look, Clifford really values team defense. I think even over sort of one-on-one defense, or what I think man delivers a lot of the time, which is LaMelo Ball defense. And what I mean is the ability to jump a passing lane. He sort of has those defensive instincts that allow him to get some steals, especially early in games. He can catch offenses sleeping. He's good at the same kind of thing that LaMelo does, which is like post-entry, he's on the weak side. He can come and sort of sneak in the back door and poke it away. And we've seen man do that multiple times. But team defense, I think, is something where he's still got a lot of work to do, just sort of understanding the assignments, understanding help. And so, I think in late games, Clifford is going to value team defense, and man is a score first guard, but he's not elite offensively like LaMelo is. Like, you're willing to live with LaMelo, whatever defense LaMelo is giving you, because he's such a valuable scorer, and he takes so much attention from the defense, from the opposing defense. Man doesn't do that yet. Maybe he develops into that player, but he's not doing that yet. And so I put all those things together, and that's sort of my speculation as to why he's not closing those games.
Well, his usage percentage is down too. If you look at, I wonder if that was just allowing Trey Mann to get a feel for the game. But those first three games, those first three wins, Trey Mann had the basketball in his hands quite a bit. And remember, Brandon Miller, the first two games with the new guys, Brandon did not reach double-digit field goal attempts. And after that, it was against Atlanta where he exploded again to what was his normal shot diet in 19 attempts in that one. Trey had a lot then. After that, it started to dwindle down a little bit more. But remember, that was in a blowout, and I'm trying to think if Trey ate in garbage time all that much that game. I know his usage was even true before that, but yeah, it's just the offense. While you might have this sudden jolt because you're experimenting with different things, and so the defense can't even really figure out what you're going to do because they've never seen this group together. I've mentioned it a million times. It's crazy. It's a dramatic rotation change. It's over 50% to over 60% sometimes, given guys in and out of the lineup due to injury. When you have that much of a change, it is going to be very different for the defense. They don't have any film to watch. Like, when you bring in your second unit, it's okay, here's Grant Williams, here's Seth Curry, here's Davis Bertans only playing like 12 minutes. So what the hell do we do? Once you get some film, it's like, okay, maybe, we realize that we can do different things, such as, all right, Micic can't shoot, and so we're going to make sure that we try to keep him out there on the perimeter. There's not too many. These are the guys we need to help on. If Brandon Miller, if we play aggressive against him, make him force the basketball away, then we'll have a shot because of how gifted he is. And so now the offense has come back down. It's still not as bad as it was pre-deadline. I think that I want to make that clear. They frequently could not get to 100 points, and 100 is not even an impressive mark anymore. At least they're still getting there despite bad offensive efforts at times. But yeah, it's still not good, Doug. The offense is still not good, hence the whole we need LaMelo thing.
Yeah, no, totally. When they acquired Trey Mann and then, immediately put him into the rotation, Nick Smith Jr. went down to Greensboro, and I'm like, man, this is bad news for NSJ. You get drafted, and then all of a sudden they get this guy who's kind of a little bit but older more experienced someone that they can depend on. Like, this is bad news for Nick Smith Jr. I could see, Nick Smith being floated out in some trades in the offseason. But I think since then, I think if you're Nick Smith Jr., you better be really working on your defense. You better really be working on your playmaking, because there is a window open here for that sixth man spot. And it's going to be decided in the offseason. Like, I think, there's plenty of room for Nick Smith Jr. to come and say, I'm better than Trey Mann. I hope that one of those guys doesn't get traded before this, next upcoming offseason, because I would love to see those two duel for that role within the offense.
Bryce McGowan's getting a little bit of that. And if there was somebody that was an old Hornets player that's now starting to crack the rotation just a little bit.
Old. He's like, that was year 2. Come on.
That was, yes, the purposeful joke.
Feels
there.
like he's been around forever, because time is a construct and it dilates in times of misery and despair. And so it does feel like Bryce has been here for like 6 seasons.
That's right. So, it's the joke. As soon as the new guys are here, none of the old guys play. None of the Nick Smith Jr., Greensboro, McGowan's bench, JT Thor bench, right? None of them play. He's getting some run because of injury, because of whatever, but 21 against Portland, only 5 against Milwaukee, 9 against Philly, 16 last night, and I thought played pretty well. There was the possession early where he kept battling. It was the weird Kelly Olynyk like rebound or steal, and then he throws it away, and McGowan's capitalizes on it. That was an early possession. Like, I thought Bryce gave us something, where, okay, he's continuing to battle, and we'll see what he can make of it this offseason.
Good effort on the boards. I didn't notice him in transition when he was open and he had a shot. He tended to make it. I mean, that's really all you're trying to ask of Bryce, because Bryce has to come in these minutes and just not stand out for making mistakes. And that's going to give him an opportunity in this upcoming, training camp, summer league period, if he goes back to Vegas. That's going to give him an opportunity to say, no, I'm worthy of let's keep experimenting with me. Let's give me another opportunity here. And I think he's well positioned, and if he keeps playing like this, he'll continue to be well positioned. Unlike, unfortunately, the guy that I championed for a long time, JT Thor, who got subbed into this game and immediately gave up 4 points for the Hornets. It's just brutal, man. I don't see the Hornets continuing with that experiment, unfortunately.
We have Stangin or Clangin next, but you did have some Brandon Miller thoughts real quickly you wanted to share.
We can take him into Stangin or Clangin.
Okay.
I can tell you what's been because I think some parts of his game have been Stangin over these past 4 losses, and some parts have been Clangin.
Okay. All right. That's good. Let's do it. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
It's been a while, but we play Stangin or Clangin, and Doug has some Brandon Miller thoughts coming up next on Locked On Hornets. Before we stang or clang, I got to tell you about PrizePicks. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 3 million members, and it's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. That's it. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and then you can watch the winnings roll in. It's also demon time on PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. Turn $10 into $1,000. Demons and goblins. You got both of them. They're the newest and most exciting way to play at PrizePicks. Squares marked with red demons or green goblins get you different payouts, and you can now win up to 100 times your money with just 4 correct picks. As little as 4 correct picks will get you that kind of payout. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Stangin or Clangin, it's here. It's been a while, but you decided to bring it back, and I'm glad you did, Doug. Let's talk about Brandon Miller here first. So, yeah, you said both, right? I'm going to hear both from you. What is Stangin about Brandon Miller right now, and what is he clanging on?
Well, I think Stangin is his rebounding. It's way up over the past 4 games, 6.3 rebounds per game. We really, prior to, I would say, the trade deadline, you could really kind of trace it back to there. Prior to that, Brandon Miller had really been focused on one thing and one thing only, and that was scoring the basketball. You weren't getting many assists from him. You weren't getting much playmaking. You were getting a few too many turnovers. You were getting some steals and blocks here and there, but rebounding-wise, you were getting really nothing from him. He stepped that part of his game up significantly post-trade deadline, and that's That's good to see. I want to see, well, look, they have to, because they're sort of still in winning mode, they're going to depend on Brandon Miller to take a ton of shots. That's just, what did Clifford say the other game? He is their best offensive chance. Mm-hmm. So he had 21 attempts against the Raptors. I expect that to continue, 20 plus. That's what they need from Brandon. Miles is going to try to shoot a lot, especially if, they're going to be missing some of these role players as well. So that's going to be the case. But like the rebounding piece, I'm really excited about. He was staying in there.
So what was he clanging on?
Well, Clangin-wise, I'll give you one quick Stangin that's going to pair with this Clangin. Stangin, he is hitting some incredibly tough shots over good defense. There was the shot in the Raptors game where the shot clock was on his back and two Raptors were draped all over him, and he turns around and knocks down a three-point shot that just made you go, wow. And those are important shots, honestly. They may be meaningless within the context of the game probably, but like they're important shots because those are the kind of shots that all NBA players make. Like you're looking for those, constantly you're looking for those signatures of like, is he going to be this or is he going to be that? Like that's the kind of play that Jason Tatum hits, right?
Well, and it felt like he had Bolden on the roll, and it could have been Bolden's first field goal. But he just decides to throw it up. I don't know if he just didn't have the angle on it. We can only see from the side camera, not the two. We don't have the 2K view. Look, so the fact that I don't know about the angle, but it looked like Bolden was rolling open, but he decides to throw it up, man. That was it.
I don't know if you watched Bolden play that whole game, but I'm glad he didn't throw it to Bolden. Bolden did not showcase himself as a player that I'm super confident in. With the shot clock going down, I want Miller thinking in that moment, I'm going to take this shot. That's great. And later in the game, he gave it up to Bertans for that go-ahead three that put them up, I think, 103, 102. That was Miller in transition. Could have very well taken it himself. He's been effective in transition and decided, I'm going to draw the defense down a little bit, kick it out to Bertans, and he hit a three. So he's more than willing to give it up in those situations. But the Clangin piece is that overall, he's had to take a lot of shots. He's not making a ton of them. Like efficiency-wise, it's bad.
And this game actually helped him, but you're right. For a while, it had been hurting him.
Yeah, cleaning glass has him at points per shot attempt, 110. That's 33rd percentile. He is really like a large part of his game is still scoring, and he's doing it inefficiently. Now, I'm confident that once LaMelo gets back, once Mark gets back, if this team were healthy and he didn't have to take 20 to 25 shots a game, that efficiency probably, draws back down a little bit early in his career. And then later in his career, he's going to be the kind of player that can take 20 to 25 shots and still be efficient. It's all there. It all just hasn't come together yet. But it is clanging right now in terms of his efficiency as a scorer.
Well, I don't want to. I want to play the game still, but over the last couple of weeks, partly because he hasn't been hitting as many shots. But Doug, the advanced numbers, like they don't love him right now, and he's a rookie. Let's all talk about this under the umbrella that he's a rookie. It's important. I know people will fast forward through this part and then just say, "Oh, they hate Brandon Miller. He's going to be a dud." Sure. That's what I want to talk about. I just want to make sure everybody gets that clear. But they don't love him, Doug. I don't know if you've noticed that. I think part of it, one, is he still isn't finishing at the rim at a high enough clip to get respected by cleaning the glass and whatever advanced metric number I guess you want to roll with. Not enough to get respected compared to his peers at that same position. And then you look at his mid-range game. While we like his mid-range game, we do. It's clearly there. It's not elite. And when your game is, predicated a lot on threes and mid-range, well, if you don't hit those shots, and it's tough to hit mid, even if you do hit shots at mid-range, right? Like it's.
Well, can I jump in? Can I jump in?
Yeah.
So you made the point. I think we really need to highlight this. If your shot profile is what Brandon Miller's shot profile is, which is super heavy on the mid-range. I mean, if you look at cleaning the glass and I look at the frequency of shooting, his mid-range, he shoots 40% of his shots from mid-range. That's 90th percentile among wings, which means like there aren't a lot of guys shooting more mid-range shots than him as a wing. His mid-range field goal percentage is 43%, which is above average, okay? 62nd percentile. But I want to highlight what you said. If you're going to take that many shots from the mid-range, you have to be elite. You have to be in the 90th percentile in terms of your accuracy. Otherwise, because of the 2-3 disparity, you are going to actually be a minus offensively for your team. And so 62nd percentile isn't good enough. If he's going to take that many from mid-range, he has to make nearly all of them, and he's not doing that. And so I think what you and I are really asking is that at some point that shot profile has to shift a little bit, and he's got to take more threes and more shots at the rim, and then make more shots at the rim, because right now 59% from the rim, that's 27th percentile in terms of accuracy.
Bad. Just straight up bad right now.
He's not making enough of those. As he gets stronger, as he gets better, as he gets more experienced, all of that I think will correct itself, but just identifying what his game is now, that's where the improvements have to come.
Right. So you can see a guy that can clearly get better in every single one of those phases that we discuss. In fact, I think it's awesome to see the type of skill that he uses to get to those mid-range spots and deliver still a good amount at an above average rate here in his rookie season. And then even the three-point shooting is real. Like, the three-point shooting is going to be crazy good for the rest of his career. And then once he gets used to an 82-game schedule, all of that's going to even out. I think right now, if you're asking why are the Hornets losing games, well, Brandon Miller is your best offensive chance. We're going to say that a million times, but that's what the coach believes. So if Brandon Miller is your best offensive chance, and that's what your best offensive chance's numbers looks like, then who else are you going to rely on in order to help you win games and get over 100 consistently and get to 110? And you just don't have that outside of Miles Bridges. We know some of the problems Miles has had on the court this year. So this is what it is for the Hornets right now. Even after the deadline, your best offensive chance is still not enough to just outright take over in his first year in the league, like it is for every rookie. It's not enough for him to be able to take over and win these games.
You know what a crazy stat I saw on the broadcast is that Brandon Miller is 5th all-time among rookies for 20-point games in a season. I think now it should be 19 now. It was 18 when they were showing the stat against the Raptors. That's crazy. And the 4, not included in the 4, were 2 rookies of the year, LaMelo Ball and Emeka Okafor. And Emeka could look. I mean, I understand LaMelo not having that because he was doing so many other things.
I heard NBA history, not franchise history.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, my bad. Franchise history.
Okay, I heard NBA history. I was like, that can't be true. But no, franchise history. I'm surprised about that number too. Like, on the low end now, it's very different, right? It's very different. But now it feels like on the low end.
As my whole world revolves around Hornets basketball. Yeah. So no, franchise history. Yeah, it was like Zoe and LJ and I can't remember the other 2 names, but it wasn't LaMelo Ball, who is understandable. But I'm surprised that Emeka in that first season with the Bobcats, I'm sure he was getting a lot of like 15 and 10 double-doubles.
Yeah, probably.
But that he didn't have more than 18. I think he played most of the games. Like that he didn't have more than 18, 20-point games is surprising to me.
Yeah, it is surprising.
And Brandon's not going to win Rookie of the Year because he's in a class with 2 absolute aliens.
I mean, he's full alien right now. Wimby is going full alien. Let's do one more. Miles Bridges, we can keep it quick. Stangin or Clangin, Doug, what have you made of the other best player on this team with LaMelo being out? It's Brandon and it's Miles. What do you think about Miles right now?
He's trending towards Stangin. I think he's recovering a little bit. But, man, the shot selection and the pass selection, too, is what continues to irk me. Like, every time he tries to thread the needle in transition to a cutter, like, my body just seizes up because I know it's going to be a turnover. And the turnovers killed them in that game against Philly. Yeah. Not so much here, but I say trend in Stangin because I think he is starting to drive a little bit more. I just wonder if early in his season, because he got a late start to the season, if early in his season he was driving a ton and he was missing a lot of bunnies. And I wonder if he lost confidence in the drive and then he started to pull out and take a lot of mid-range shots and now he's not hitting a ton of those. His 3 is sort of wishy-washy. Sometimes he's like amazing from 3, sometimes he's not. But the selection has been pretty consistently bad in terms of just a lot of pull-ups off the dribble, not moving the basketball earlier in the shot clock. I would hopefully he's trending towards Stangin because, look, to win basketball games, Brandon Miller might be their best offensive chance, but I think that Bridges is still the better overall player right now, and he's got to play at that level, and he's got to demand more attention from defenses. The only way you do that is by knocking down shots and moving. And when you do command that attention, moving the basketball effectively, and he's just not doing it right now.
Well, I mean, yeah, if we bring over some of the stats that we did talk about for Brandon Miller and we apply them to Miles Bridges, like Miles is somebody that was very good at the rim the last 2 years that he played. And that's not the case. I still see him missing bunnies. Like, I don't really think that's maybe the volume of that has changed, but he's still missing like quite a few shots at the rim. And so honestly, what's helping him out is his 3-point shooting over the course of the season, because there was an outlier 3-point season that he had. And that was the 2 years ago, right? It's weird because he missed a whole season. So when we're talking about 3 years ago, if you will, right? 3 years ago is when he had the outlier 3 season, but it's closer to that. He's shooting 37%. I think he shot 38 that year that we're discussing. So it's a little reversed. If he was shooting normally at the rim alongside this 3-point percentage,
yeah,
I mean, that's a dangerous dude out there on the court. Like, so what we're talking about with Miles is not quite hitting at that level anymore, trying to apply those stats to Miles like, we did with Brandon. It's different. And by the way, like Miles, his game is predicated on that. It's give him space, get him downhill, let him go, toe to toe with whoever the big is, challenging at the rim and absorbing that contact. That's a lot of what Miles' game is. And you're right. Like, I don't know how much of it's mental, but he is missing more bunnies than we can remember when he played the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it was really predicated on like drawing the contact and getting fouls. Like, I don't know what his foul rate was 2 years, those 2 seasons.
It got better because remember that was a big criticism of his game. It got better though. So,
but like having that skill, being able to finish through that contact is great, especially now. I don't know if you've seen this research from Tom Havistro, but like, and you could see it in this Toronto game. They weren't calling anything at the rim. I don't know why they called that ticky-tack foul against Bertans against Quickly. That was an absurd foul at the end of that game that gave Quickly 2 shots because they were in the bonus. Like, that was a silly foul that they had not called all game, and Clifford mentioned it you might lose some money for mentioning it at the end. But they weren't calling anything at the rim, and that's not just exclusive to that game. Tom Havistro on his Substack did some research, and like foul calls have really cratered towards the back half of this season. And is influencing offense's ability to score, because so much of the scoring over the past couple of seasons has happened at the free throw line, and the refs are adjusting to that. Whether that's from the NBA or not, I don't know. But Miles' ability to get by his guy and finish through that contact would be a valuable skill if he could accomplish it, like you were saying, in the way that he has his past couple of seasons.
Yeah, maybe he's trending in the Stangin category. We'll see. That'll do it for maybe BEE. Do we like that? That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for joining us and making us your first listen. Again, we're free and available anywhere you get your pods. That includes YouTube every single day. Make sure you go check out Doug on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com, and you can listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. 92.7 FM. Subscribe, hit the notification button on YouTube as well. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.